Welcome all at our Laravel Meetup. For everyone who doesn't know me yet, my name is Lea, and I'm responsible for the communication at Byte5. And today I will be your moderator. Yeah, we have a special guest today. I think I don't need to introduce him. Taylor, it's a great pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
And I think the last time you were our guest was in 2018. So since that, a lot happened, and yeah, we're all excited to see what's new. Yeah, before we start, please note that we will record the session and we'll publish it on our YouTube channel. So you can rewatch it afterwards or share it with people that couldn't attend today. Some of you have already handed in some questions. Thank you for that. And I think we will start with them. And if you have any questions in between, please feel free to post them in the chat or raise your virtual hand. And yeah, then we can start with the first question.
Sounds good.
Perfect. Taylor, yesterday you asked your followers on Twitter what they're building lately, and I would like to ask the question to you. What are you working on at the moment?
So we've been working on a couple things. I built a project that I haven't released yet called Beep, B-E-E-P. It's a little different than my other projects. It's not necessarily a developer tool. It's more of a team productivity tool that we sort of modeled after how we do some things here at Laravel. I actually finished that project back in August, but it has been going through like the design process, the front end design process pretty much since then. But that is finally pretty much done. I have the working app, in my hands with the design and everything. So what I'm doing now is just going through and putting kind of some final polish on that and adding some final few features. And I'm hoping to probably release that at the February 9th Laracon event. I'll probably release that. And that is going to be a totally open source project to be used. I'm going to host a hosted version of it, but I'm also going to open source all of the code so that everyone can read it and learn from it and see how I like to use Laravel when I'm building my own applications. It's not an overly complicated application, but it's complicated enough to be useful as a good learning resource. And it's not like a to-do list where it's so simple that it doesn't really help you very much. So outside of that, we have been getting ready for PHP 8.1's release, which is next month. We had to make some updates to all of our libraries to get ready for that. That is pretty much ready to go. And then we have also been working on a refreshed user interface for Laravel Forge, which is also pretty far along as well. That I think that probably will be released before the end of the year. That's also been another long process of, working with a designer. We don't actually have a UI designer on full-time staff here, so we have to contract that out to other people, and that just makes it take a little bit more time to get some of that stuff done. That's a pretty good, overview of what we've been working on. Dries, of course, manages all of our open source repository issues and stuff like that. And then just the daily pull requests I manage myself when people contribute features and such. Yeah,
sounds great, and a lot of news. Talking about releases and news, can you give us some insights into what the community can expect in Laravel 9? That was also a great topic in the questions.
Yeah, so Laravel 9 is supposed to be released in January. It will be released in January. In fact, Laravel 9 has kind of some maintenance related features, like for example, the Swift Mailer library was recently sort of retired by Fabian, who is the creator of the Symfony framework, and replaced sort of by Symfony Mailer. So in Laravel 9, we've replaced Swift Mailer with Symfony Mailer, just so, because Swift Mailer is not going to be updated any longer. We actually updated Swift Mailer to PHP 8.1 ourselves here at Laravel and submitted that as a pull request. But anyway, we'll be upgrading to Symfony Mailer. We're also upgrading to Fly System 2.0 from Fly System 1.0. That just has some minor changes. It's not really anything huge. There are some new there's some new features around types in a few places. There's a new query builder interface that lets you type in a query builder interface. But honestly, most of the stuff that we have been doing has been going to the current release, because we're trying really hard not to introduce any breaking changes. And the only reason we would put something in Laravel 9 is if it caused something to break. And because we've been trying to avoid that so much, we've actually shipped most of every feature we work on to Laravel 8. Mohammed is working on a new cast, an eloquent model cast for Laravel that he sent to Laravel 9 to cast to enums, which is a PHP 8.1 feature. So you'll be able to cast your eloquent properties to PHP enums. Because PHP is finally getting kind of built-in support for that language feature. And even that may actually end up going into Laravel 8. We'll see. But other than that, it's mainly been maintenance type stuff, upgrading libraries that we depend on, stuff like that. There's not really a ton of huge breaking things. We've been trying to do the best we can to ship all of the cool new stuff to users as soon as possible and on Laravel 8 with no breaking changes. So that's really where most of the stuff is going.
Okay. Does anyone have a question about that? So
I should also note that Laravel 9 also updates to Symfony 6 for our underlying components that we use, like Symfony Console, Symfony HTTP Foundation, which are kind of the two big components that we use at Laravel. Those will be upgraded to Symfony 6 from Symfony 5.
Okay. If no one has...
anyone daring?
Yeah, I have a question. What PHP version will be the minimum version required for Laravel 9?
That's a good question. It will be PHP 8 because I believe we even have underlying libraries that require PHP 8. I can't remember what Symfony 6 minimum version is. It may be PHP 8 as well. Let me look. I'm not sure, but I know we have some libraries that require PHP 8, and that's what Laravel 9 will require as well. By then, PHP 8 will have been out for over a year, probably like 14 months, I guess. And has some nice features, of course, that we can start to take advantage of, so that will be nice.
Active support for PHP 7.4 will run out, well, in a few days, actually, in 1 month. So.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's a good reason too.
Okay, I think Andreas, you had another question that you wrote us. Your co-workers keep saying that Laravel wouldn't be a great fit for a very big company project. Taylor, what do you think about that?
I think Laravel is a good fit for lots of kinds of projects. I think, a lot of times it depends on the skills of the developers involved in the project. If they are very new to Laravel, probably their first project or second project is not going to be the best. If they're experienced Laravel developers, I think it's definitely a good fit for large projects. I consider Laravel Vapor itself a fairly large project, actually, that we wrote ourselves. And I think the key is to leverage some of the features that Laravel gives you to make it easier to work with large projects. So definitely take advantage of all of Laravel's testing capabilities that it offers you so that you can make sure your code is well tested. You can also take advantage of tools like Laracon, which is sort of a Laravel ready version of PHP stand, which gives you good static analysis and tells you, like, for example, if you're calling a method that doesn't exist on an object, or you're passing the wrong type to a method, and things like that. Some of the things your IDE can tell you, but some of the things not. And then also, there's also some helpful resources out in the community for dealing with large Laravel projects. Spotsy has a book called Laravel Beyond CRUD that they've written based on their own experiences with large Laravel projects, and some kind of patterns you can use to make sure that your code is maintainable and understandable in that context. I think, like, obviously Laravel has been used in lots of big projects over the last 10 years. And I think it's the success of the project is really going to depend on the developer team that's actually writing the code. There's sort of bad code in all sorts of different languages and frameworks. I saw terrible code when I was a .NET developer. I see terrible code as a PHP developer. I see terrible code when I write JavaScript. So it's not unique to any one tool or language. It's just going to depend on sort of the discipline and skill set of the developers involved, I think.
Okay. Yeah, if you have any questions in between, just raise your hand or write. If not, there was another question concerning Octane.
Yes.
For those who worked with Octane yet, can you tell us about something about the future of the package?
Yeah, so to give some background, Octane is a way to keep your Laravel applications sort of in memory in between requests. So that's very different than how we typically think of PHP applications working. Usually every new request to the website triggers the whole framework to run all of its code from start to finish to handle the request. Octane takes a different approach, and it's similar to other approaches in other languages like Node and so on, where you sort of boot the application once and load up all of the framework stuff into memory and register, in Laravel's case, all the container bindings, all of that configuration and stuff into memory. And then when a new request comes in, we receive it and we just handle it with this already loaded application instance. So what it does is essentially eliminate the framework overhead, the framework boot overhead of your application, so that only your application code is really what's determining your performance. We've sort of eliminated the framework from the equation. So that's, of course, a huge benefit because your application is going to run much faster. It's also a huge benefit if you persist the DB connection between those requests, so you're not having to close and reopen the database connection for every single request. That also, shaves several milliseconds. It could be as much as 10 or 20 milliseconds actually off your response time. The downsides would be that you need to be aware that your application is running in memory all the time. So it's a little easier to create memory leaks if you're not paying attention to that. If you're just adding stuff to an array on every request, that array is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. You need to be aware of that. But we have documentation around all of that. Some of the latest things that have been happening with Octane are Octane support in Laravel Vapor, which is our serverless deployment tool for Laravel that ships your code to AWS Lambda, and really is our most scalable deployment platform for Laravel that we have right now. It can handle thousands of requests at the same time. In addition to, and then also with Octane, you're taking advantage of the database connection being open between those requests as well. So Octane support in Laravel Vapor is sort of our latest news in the Octane ecosystem. Other than that, we're continuing to sort of monitor new features in Swool, which is an underlying PHP extension that is leveraged by Octane. As new features become available in Swool, we sort of can make them also available in Octane. But other than that, I think Octane has been pretty stable and well received. I think we've received reports that people are using it with great success, both in like a Forge context and in a Laravel Vapor context. I think people are enjoying it. All of our applications at Laravel actually just aren't at the scale to need that kind of speed. But some people's applications are definitely like application in the community, especially analytics applications like Fathom Analytics, where they're just receiving so much traffic. They're really taking advantage of stuff like that.
Okay. David posted a question in the chat. You think it's maybe inappropriate, but if you don't want to answer, what is your favorite product from the Laravel ecosystem aside from the framework itself? Like, which one do you deem the coolest and the most useful?
Well, the one I use the most is probably Laravel Forge, just personally, because we have probably 20 or 30 servers managed by Laravel Forge. So as far as the one that I use the most on a daily basis, it's definitely Forge. Forge that's also true for just the community. Forge is the biggest product in terms of the number of customers, the number of servers being managed, which is hundreds of thousands of servers being managed in Forge. So for me, that's what I use. It's also, of course, always going to have a special place for me because it was the first product I wrote for Laravel, kind of the first big, commercial tool I wrote for Laravel outside of the framework itself. I think Vapor, for any future stuff I do, any future projects, I'll probably host on Laravel Vapor because I never have to think about operating system upgrades or SSL certificates or any of that stuff, or even just scaling servers at all or scaling workers at all. It's nice just to be able to forget about all of that stuff. And I also really like the point in time database recovery that you can do right from the Laravel or Laravel Vapor UI. So I haven't actually launched any big products since Laravel Vapor, so I haven't had a chance to actually launch my own product on it other than we do deploy Vapor using Vapor, which is kind of weird, but that's the only thing we've done like that. But to answer the question, I would probably say Forge. It's the one I use the most. The best code base, the best code base is definitely Laravel Vapor, though. As far as like what code am I the most proud of and do I think is the most cleanly written, it would definitely be Laravel Vapor, and that's also because it's the newest. So I had just more experience than.
Yeah, David says that matches his experience as well. So good answer. Joshua, you also have a question?
Yes, I have a question regarding Laravel. I'm sorry if my connection is bad. I'm on the train. Can you hear me? Is everything looking fine?
I can kind of hear you. Yeah.
Okay. I can also write the answer in the chat because I'm on the train. Just give me a second.
Okay.
The German internet.
So, anyone else? Maybe in the meantime.
Yeah, Felipe. Okay. Do you recommend AWS or to use Laravel software for a large amount of users?
Do I recommend AWS for large applications? Kind of, yeah, in some ways, because I say that, but most of our stuff actually runs on DigitalOcean, but I actually do like AWS a lot for these kinds of serious applications because it has so many tools and it has so many features that as your application grows, it just seems like I end up needing them more. I think I really like AWS RDS, the database service, and then also the database proxy service they have where you can handle many connections at once via that. And then also the nice thing about using AWS is that when you're using these sort of infrastructure as a service tools, like for example, there's things like Single Store DB or Planet Scale is another one where they're managing your database cluster for you. Lots of those tools run all of their infrastructure on AWS. And so one thing we found is that like if we're on some other provider and we want to work with those tools, the network latency is much greater because we're outside of the AWS infrastructure with our stuff. So being on AWS, I think, has benefits in that regard as well, just because so much other stuff runs on AWS that you want to talk to and communicate with through APIs and stuff, that it's just so much faster to be on AWS. That being said, of course, AWS is definitely the most complicated platform to deploy stuff on versus like DigitalOcean or Linode or Vultr or something. So for simpler projects, it's definitely much easier to get started on other platforms. But for very large and robust projects, I think AWS makes a lot of sense most of the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think Joshua finished his question. When is the point to move to Vapor, in your opinion? I really would like to try it out with the client project, but I think it's hard to sell it to the client compared to using DO or Linode with load balancing, etc.
Yeah. Of course, it's always sort of best to do it as early as possible so you can make sure your application is compatible and working well in Vapor. But that being said, it's not impossible to move an existing project to Vapor at all. For me, myself, I understand, like, I don't really have to sell projects to clients in that way. So I don't really usually have to consider that, but I can understand that concern. All I can say is that I like to do it as early as possible to make sure things are compatible and working well. If I think that it's eventually going to need something at the scale of Laravel Vapor, of course, if you're not going to need that kind of scale, we are developers, so we usually do assume that our applications need tons of scale, but the reality is that most probably don't. If you're not going to need that kind of scale, then of course, using something like DigitalOcean or some other VPS service is going to be much simpler and cheaper as well.
Joshua also had a question on Beep, but I think he joined us later. So Taylor talked about it at the beginning. We record the session, so maybe it's the easiest way to just rewatch it afterwards. Okay. Any other question? Okay, then I think Marlon had one concerning the authorization packages. Marlon, do you want to ask yourself?
Yeah, why not? So, like, I think 1 or 2 years ago, you switched from the Laravel UI package to the other packages, like Jetstream and yeah, like all the other packages. So what was your decision making in doing that and like splitting them up in that way? And why did you drop support for Bootstrap, for example? Yeah.
So the thinking there was, I'll have to answer this in stages, but the breaking them, originally there was just going to be Laravel Jetstream, and I was going to break up the backend and the front end of that so that if you just wanted an authentication backend, like for example, for an SPA or something, you could use Laravel Fortify. So you could look at it like Laravel UI was split into 2 packages, essentially. Laravel Fortify, which was the backend, and then Laravel Jetstream, which was the front end that used the Laravel Fortify backend. But you could put any front end you wanted with Laravel Fortify. That was the idea. When Laravel Jetstream was released, it got sort of mixed reviews because I think some people found it too complicated compared to Laravel UI. And in some ways it is more complicated than Laravel UI. So in response to that, I kind of wrote a spiritual successor to Laravel UI, like a true kind of next generation of Laravel UI with Laravel Breeze, which is of course like a small Jetstream Breeze. But Laravel Breeze is very much like Laravel UI in the sense that all of the code is right there in front of you. It's not really a big package. All it does is kind of copy the views and controllers into place, and then it's totally your code to customize however you want. I think I actually really enjoy Laravel Breeze a lot. I like how simple it is and how straightforward it is. And I think that was a better successor to Laravel UI than Laravel Jetstream was. I think Jetstream is fine and good if you need a little bit more complex behavior or kind of a more robust project, but Laravel Breeze, I think, is probably sufficient for most projects. And, in hindsight, I might have only released Laravel Breeze if I had done that first. But anyways, regarding Bootstrap to Tailwind, most of the change there was because we simply weren't using Bootstrap anymore at Laravel for any new development. We were only using Tailwind. And it just sort of like, we weren't sure we really wanted to maintain stuff that we weren't really using ourselves or wouldn't use ourselves as developers for new projects. It felt like Tailwind was more customizable, more flexible in terms of building custom sort of bespoke user interfaces. And also, that being said, we just sort of were leaving it in the community's hands. If they wanted a Bootstrap version of a authentication scaffolding, they could do that. And then also one thing when this happened is we sort of committed to keeping Laravel UI up to date as far as PHP versions go and Laravel versions go. So we actually still have been maintaining that ever since. And you can still install it today, for example, on a Laravel project. It's not really something we're adding new features to or have any big future plans for, because I kind of consider Breeze and Jetstream sort of the current generation of that kind of tool. But we have kept it running for people that like Bootstrap. But again, we just use Tailwind on all of our new stuff, like Laravel Vapor is all Tailwind, Laravel Nova is all Tailwind. So it's just sort of like the tool that we're using here.
Great, thank you.
As our time is already almost up, maybe one short question. Have you decided yet whether the next Laracon US will be an in-person event?
I am leaning towards it will be in person. That's kind of what I'm leaning towards right now. I actually have been speaking to venues. I spoke to a venue in New York earlier this week. And right now I would like to do it in person if possible. I do think it would be a smaller event, maybe 400 or 500 people, which I guess that's still a pretty good amount of people, but smaller than like in 2019, we had almost 900 people. Venues in New York, as of now, do require either vaccination or proof of a negative COVID test. So that will be just like up to the venue and up to that state here in the United States to decide. But I would like to do it in person. I think it's just so much fun to do it in person versus online, and both have their benefits. Doing it online, so many people can attend, where you can have 4,000 or 5,000 attendees, but it's really nice to be able to meet in person and talk in person as well. So right now I'm planning on probably organizing an in-person event for the summer. It would probably be in July of 2022.
That sounds great. Yeah, I think time's up. Taylor, is there anything you want to say, or is there an opportunity to meet you in the next time anywhere?
Actually, yes. I am planning to be in Laracon Europe, which right now is scheduled for January. So actually pretty close. I don't think tickets have gone on sale, but I think they will soon. That is also going to be a smaller event than usual, just a few hundred people, I think, at the max. But as long as I can travel there, which right now I think I should be able to, as long as I have a negative COVID test, then I'm planning on being there actually in January. So that would be one chance to meet in person. But other than that, no, nothing else to say. And thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for your time and for the interesting insights. And also everyone else, thanks for joining. As already mentioned, you will find the session on our YouTube channel. Please feel free to share and rewatch and so on. I hope to see some of you at our next Laravel meetups. For any information about that, you can just follow our social media channels. We are always looking for speakers, so if you're interested, feel free to contact me or one of my colleagues. I will post the contact details in the chat. And yeah, I wish you all a great evening or a great day, and hope to see you soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.